A complete reversal, a sudden understanding that everything you used to believe is terribly, terribly wrong. What happened to me was actually a little bit different from that. I'm reminded of skeptic Isaac Asimov's comments about flat Earth theory. Nowadays, of course, we are taught that the flat Earth theory is wrong, that it is all wrong, terribly wrong, absolutely. But it isn't. The curvature of the Earth is nearly 0 per mile, so that although the flat Earth theory is wrong, it happens to be nearly right. That's why the theory lasted so long. It's not that I suddenly felt I'd been wrong about everything, it's that I suddenly realized I was missing huge parts of the picture. Barry Beyerstein handed out free copies of the BC Skeptics newsletter, which is just a thin little pamphlet thing. It was my first glimpse of something called the skeptical literature. I went away with a lot to think about. How could there be an entire parallel literature about my favorite topics, and I knew nothing about it? It was like I'd been walking past a treasure vault my entire life without ever noticing it, and suddenly I was handed a key. Some of you may recall a scene from the action movie Die Hard, in which the brilliant thieves succeed in opening the 7th lock of a vault containing hundreds of millions of dollars. As the door opens, light spills across their awestruck faces, and the soundtrack sweeps us forward into Ode to Joy. That's roughly how I felt the first time I stepped into my university library. I actually thought of things in cinematic terms like those in those days. I recall my astonishment when I realized there was an entire second story to the collection. I spent days there those first weeks. I found a lot of treasures, but the real jewel, the thing that helped set the course of my life, was hidden away in the periodical collection. A complete set of Skeptical Inquirer magazines, going back to its launch. I arrived on campus as a fledgling skeptic, now all too aware how little I knew. I had one small taste of the skeptical literature, my well-read, ragged copy of the thin BC Skeptics newsletter, and that kindled an intense interest, and I wanted more. And now here were hundreds upon hundreds of pages of investigation and critique. I couldn't believe such a wealth of skeptical research existed. I returned every day, working my way through the stack hungrily, systematically. And that was it. I was head over heels. I had plenty of time to think about skepticism. A few of you may have heard that my first career was as a professional shepherd. It's true, I worked for about 10 years as a herding sheep, mostly along the BC side of the Alaska Panhandle. When I tell people that I was a shepherd, certain questions almost always come up. What, really? A shepherd? You mean with sheep? Did you have one of those sticks? You must have gotten a lot of riding done, huh? The answer to the first two questions is yes. I used to herd 1,500 or 2,000 sheep on tree plantations in northern BC. It is a lot of sheep. As a brush management tool. Most of the sheep were rented from Hutterite colonies right here in Alberta. It was a win-win-win-win-win situation. We made money from the brush removal service. The Hutterites got rent for the sheep got fat, they had lots of lambs. The replanted baby trees got a little leg up over the weeds. And the timber companies got a cheap, effective brush management tool. And yes, we did have the sticks. They're called crooks. I advise shepherds never to leave home without one. They're like duct tape or a Leatherman. They're the perfect multi-tool for the job. But I had a hard time not rolling my eyes at that last question. We worked 16 hours a day, all of it on our feet, watching intensely and worrying. The work was like any farm or forestry job, hard, intense, occasionally dangerous. A lot of stuff can go wrong. I could tell you some stories, but they're bummers. I'll save that for another talk. So no, we couldn't read or write anything, but I did find it possible to read. Reading I could do on the fly, just a sentence or two at a time, like this, keeping an eye on the sheep. My brothers were also shepherds. All three of us got into the habit of carrying skeptical masterpieces in our backpack, battered copies of Skeptic magazine, Sagan's Demon Haunted World, Randy's Flim Flam, Martin Gardner's Facts and Fallacies in the Name of Science. This is what a Stephen Jay Gould book looks like after it's kicked around in a shepherd's backpack for a while, but the worse for wear. I spent summers in the bush, winters at university. In the early 90s, I started discussing skepticism as part of my college radio shows. In the late 90s, my brother Jason and I co-hosted an off-campus skeptical speakers series and organized on-campus skeptics groups at UVic and Camosun College. We did some skeptical activism, Darwin Day events, newspaper columns, complaints about this and that. Eventually, I started contributing to the skeptical and humanist magazines I'd been reading all these years, first illustrations and eventually writing. I took over Junior Skeptic in 2002, and the rest is history. I'd like to finish today by asking you to imagine two people, Ada and B. Both are smart, reasonable, well-read. Both consider themselves critical thinkers. Both walk into a pharmacy looking for something to help with a headache. Ada buys a brand name headache medication because her loved ones swear by it, because she knows from experience that it works for her, and because her sources tell her that most of alternative medicine is hogwash. By contrast, B buys a homeopathic preparation because her loved ones swear by it, because she knows from experience that it works for her, and because her sources tell her that most of mainstream medicine is hogwash. Who's the villain in that story? There isn't one, or at least Ada and B aren't it. They're both just regular folks making regular decisions based on the best information they have available. Both are at the mercy of their sources, and as it happens, they're both partly right. But that does not mean that they're both equally right. Isaac Asimov put it like this: when people thought the earth was flat, they were wrong. When people thought the earth was spherical, they were wrong. But if you think thinking the earth is spherical is just as wrong as thinking the earth is flat, then your view is wronger than both of them put together. The difference between slightly true and mostly true does matter. I say that as a kid science writer and also as a parent. When we learn more about science, when we learn how to find and evaluate the best available information, we claim something beautiful for ourselves and for our children. Scientific literacy empowers us to better protect our children and provide them with opportunities. It helps us to make informed health decisions on their behalf. And most importantly, it allows us to take our kids by the hand and show them how big and wonderful the universe really is. Every child deserves to see from those great heights. It's a view that belongs to everyone, and yet it is concealed from so many. Because while every human deserves scientific literacy, it's not something we're born with. It's something we must be taught. Thank you.